Hey class, I wanted to take a little bit of time to go over conditional statements and how they work. They're really exceptional for allowing your program to make decisions while it's running. And the way that it does that is by performing evaluations. So what that does is it evaluates something to a Boolean. So the first thing you might see is something like this. So then if you have if true, then you're going to, and you'll notice it's indented, do something here and here. The other thing you might see is if it's evaluated to false, do nothing under here. And then, if that does evaluate to false, you have the option of putting an additional evaluation by doing something called elif, which stands for else if. And then you have an additional thing here, which will say stop what the evaluations are doing and do this. If elif evaluates to false, then don't do this. Finally, we have else, which is kind of the catch-all. Do this. And so the else only occurs if the if and any elifs fail. Within here, you can also do Boolean logic. So you can use and, you can use or, you can use exclusive or, you can use bitwise or. There are quite a few different things that you can do. But for the scope of this, let's just focus on and or. And what that is it evaluates true. And let me see. We'll say if true and true will evaluate to true. And essentially what this does is, in concept, as it says, is A true and B true. And if they're both true, then that's yes. If true and false, then it will be false. If false and true will also be false. And then if false and false, then obviously we're going to evaluate that to false. With or, it works a little bit differently. Or is, like we would expect, if true or true, then true. If true or false will still be true, because one of them, either or, is true. If false or true will also be true. And then if false or false will evaluate to false. So what does this look like? What this looks like is this. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a very simple budget application. What this is going to do is literally ask for what was spent. And so let's just, what was spent? Lastly, we're going to say define the budget. And this is just an arbitrary value for this case. We're going to say $100. So we want to determine what happens with the budget. So if the spent amount is greater than the budget, then clearly they went over the budget. So here we're going to print you went over the budget. So real quick, let's just see what that happens. So we spent $150 and we went over the budget. But clearly that only takes care of one instance, because if I spend $80, it doesn't know what to do. So we have to give it a little bit more logic. Else print you went under the budget. So now if I only spent $80, you went under the budget. Great. What happens if we spend the exact amount? Oh, well, that's not true. So maybe we should do another evaluation. So we can do that by, as we saw above, elif spent is the budget, or equals, which evaluates is true. Then we're going to say you spent all of the budget. So now, if I spend $100, you spent all of the budget. However, this could potentially have additional evaluations. So let's say elif spent is less than arbitrary number of 50, print you were under half the budget. And let's do another one. Is less than 5. You were way under the budget. Let's see what happens. So I spend 25. You're under half the budget. Let's say 4. Oh, well, we're still saying we're under half, which this is true, but what happened here? Well, again, Python evaluates top down. So we evaluated here, this was true, so we skipped this one because this is what we told it to do. If we want to do an evaluation like the spent is less than 5, we have to do that evaluation before another one that could be true. So in this case, we're going to move this here. Oh, this will not behave properly. So we're going to do that. And now, if we say 4, you are way under the budget, just like we had here. And if we do 25, because 25 is greater than 4, but still less than 50, now you're under half the budget. So again, it's important to make sure if we get these weird logic errors that we just think it through. Does this evaluate to true? No. What about this one? No. What about this one? No. What about this one? Yes, okay, it's going to do this for sure. If none of these are true, then we hit the else statement. And we mentioned on here this and statement. So let's do a very specific check so that we can see what that looks like. So if we spent more, well, let's see here. If we spent less than the budget and we spent more than 90. Oh, let's move this thing up here real quick. This won't work because we have an if statement here. This should be an elif. Then we will, oh, and this is indented too far. Then here we will say, cutting it close. So now we have this thing here. It'll evaluate, is it less than the budget? Yeah, but is it more than 90? And if these are both true, as we saw here, then it will be true. If one of them is false, it will be false. And if they're both false, it's false. So let's go ahead and see what happens here. If we spent $95, cutting it close, and we can do this with or as well. So let's come down to here. So this or spent is less is greater than 1. Let's not do greater than 1. That's a very bad example. Ors do work, as we see here, though, so let's get a good example here. How about we do this? Elif spent is less than the budget, or that's always going to be true. Okay, well, let's move an evaluation up above. If this and it spent over $1,000, we're going to say you went way over the budget. Elif spent is still greater than budget. You went over budget. Now if we run this, we'll see if we do 150, still went over budget. if we do 15,000 or 115,000, we went way over the budget because again, this and this. This is another and. So for or, let's say if it's over 200 or if it's over 1,000, these will both be true. So let's say 200, it went over. If we do 20,000, also true. And one of these will always be true or one of them will be false. But let's say we do this. Spent is less than 200 or it's less than or equal to 200 or its spent is greater than 1,000. So if we do something like this, you still went way over the budget. And again, either of these are true. So if we do 15,000, still went way over the budget. So really the only way to get out of this is to do something greater than 200 but less than 1,000. So we do 500 and we just went over budget. So again, these logical statements really help us to set up some complex ways to determine what our program should do based off of what is entered. Hopefully this has been helpful. Let me know if there's anything I can do to clarify it. Thanks, class.